Hello guys and welcome back, it's me Yesig Hydra. Today's video we're going to be looking through the cover system of Inquisitor Martyr, and we're going to be going through all the things that aren't quite right and why the system doesn't seem to be working yet. I have faith these devs have been doing a great job, but I do think we need to give a little bit of direction with this system because not many people are making use of it within the game, and here's why. We're going to be breaking it down in this video, first of all talking about why the cover's here, then showing you some in-game examples of situations where it's just not working as intended. So first up, let's talk about why we have a cover system. So, typical ARPG, you're encouraged to go through trash as quickly as possible, plough through mobs in order to get toward the bosses of the map and get yourself some loot from them. The satisfaction really comes from the loot rather than the combat. Often trash is just trash, it's an inconvenience to fight against. What we have in strategy orientated cover-based combat though is you can take on larger challenges at a time in smaller spaces, so you don't have to traverse big maps, and you can get a little sensation of being overwhelmed and a satisfaction from overcoming that. So the actual combat itself starts to become a little bit more enjoyable, although yes, it does slow the pace down. But this is what the devs said they wanted. They wanted a strategic orientation to the combat. So what we need for this to work is we need firstly the feeling of being overwhelmed. We need the enemy firepower to be more than we can sustain unless we have combat. This is on the assumption that they want combat to be cover to be an integral part of the combat. They need enemy firepower to feel overwhelming. Not only in terms of aesthetics, but actually if you stand there and try and tank a dreadnought shooting you with a heavy bolter, I would argue that you kind of need to feel like, oh my god, I need to take some cover, this is going to really hurt. Obviously, we're at the early game difficulty at the moment, so a lot of this doesn't really factor in yet, but this is a direction the devs will need to move in to make this feature useful. Enemies with heavy bolters, Chaos Space Marines with lots of Havoc firepower, they need to be scary and intimidating. Likewise, if you come against a boss who's got two heavy bolters, let's say they stick a dreadnought with two twin-link heavy bolters in each hand, that guy needs to make you think, oh my god, I need to take cover or I'm going to get rinsed. At the moment it doesn't seem that they've gone for that direction, but they may well slowly move towards this. What we also need is some of the enemy behaviour to be orientated around this. Currently, the cover system when there's a dreadnought nearby is almost redundant because they just walk up to you and smack you. It would be nice in a way if there were certain areas you could get to and take cover and avoid their melee hits entirely. Maybe this would be unrealistic or unfeasible or not very feasible, but currently one of the things that prevents the cover system from being utilised by most players is the fact that the dreadnought just comes up to you and punches you in the face. Whereas comparing this to something like Gears of War, there's always going to be a ranged weapon, and if you're in cover they're going to stand there and they're going to shoot you and you're going to exchange shots, but if you run up to them they'll start smacking you in return. Either way, I think enemy AI is partly to blame as to why the cover system is not used, and it mainly is these dreadnoughts being a dick. Next up, we also need more cover, because currently within the maps there is not a lot of it going around. There is about 2 to 3 different cover pieces per room, but the issue is that it gets destroyed really, really quickly. If you're hiding behind it and an entire room is shooting at you, it just disappears. You've got about 3 seconds. You compare this to that feeling earlier of wanting to be overwhelmed by enemies. Instead, you get, okay, I need to take cover, I can take some cover, okay, there's 2 enemies there, 3, and my cover's gone. Time to go to another piece of cover and repeat. It's never actually used as a place where you set up a sort of a safe base and then you develop your strategy around that area. Instead, it's just a piece of scenery that dies really quickly. Maybe that's intentional. I can see the argument in late game in a ARPG. You can maybe cheeseball really hard difficulty missions just by abusing cover mechanics. So maybe that's why that's in place. But I do feel that there hasn't been a good balance put in place yet. So we have quality and quantity of the cover also being a bit of an issue if they want it to be a core mechanic. At the moment it's just an add-on, and unfortunately add-ons that take more time to do are really just going to be inconveniences and they're going to be redundant, so it's not going to be used. One other thing that I think is really so relevant to this. What you'll find in Gears of War is you get stuck in a room or stuck in a building, and there will be a set amount of enemies you've got to kill, and you can't run away. You have to make do with the cover you've got to survive. Whereas what we've got currently is the ability to run away, drop aggro from the scarier mobs, and then return and kill the trash on their own. So the dreadnoughts actually drop aggro, whereas the small mobs don't. This is actually a bad thing. What I think we need is rooms which reset when you leave them, or doors that lock and force you to stay in a goddamn room and fight the goddamn challenge. Yes, it's going to be frustrating. Yes, you might die. But what it means is you actually have to make use of the combat system to survive. It's not very ARPG-like, I grant you that, but it is tactical, it is strategic. It means once you're in that room, you've got to go for it. It's going to be a lot more suited to what they're aiming for with this type of game. And I think it could be easily explained with something like a demon portal, that when you leave it alone, they do a ritual and, you know, all the demons come back again. That's absolutely fine. Yes, it may be a little bit unrealistic if a dreadnought respawns every time you walk out of the room and back in, but I think there could be some features here which could be implemented to make this make a little bit more sense. So in summary so far, I think the devs need a clear direction and a clear picture as to where they want to go with this game's cover system, if it's going to be mandatory or optional, and if it's something they want every player to be using, or if it's just going to be something for the squishier characters. But I think they need a clear idea as to where they're going with this one, because at the moment there's no benefit to using it. You might as well just walk forward shooting, which is pretty dull. Okay, so moving on now to the nuts and bolts of the actual combat system itself, because there is stuff here that can be tweaked and can be improved. Let's start off with the question: am I in cover or not? Lots of people seem to struggle with this, myself included. If we walk up to this wall over here, what we'll find if we face our 4 different directions, the most common direction I'm going to be facing is upwards. I have a preference to move up on a screen. I think most people in ARPGs will be familiar with that concept. Problem, however, the problem here is when I'm facing upwards, this is the least easy position to see if I'm actually crouched or not, because the girth of my skirt is covering my legs. I know it's not a skirt, but you know what I mean. Here we have a bit of an issue. It's not obvious if you're even taking cover or not, and if you're popping up or down, especially when you're shooting stuff. There's lots going on, effects going on left and right, people charging at you. You don't want to be second guessing, are you even in cover? What you want is a system like Gears of War, where you slap yourself so hard against that cover that you make a thud. You get some nice little sort of visuals to really, and sound effects as well, to really concretely say you are in cover. That's what we need. It needs to be like slapping a piece of cheese against a wall. You need to know whether that's stuck or not. So what I would actually suggest is a sticking system like Gears of War, where you press that shift key or the A key if you're used to playing Gears of War, and you hug it. And you actually attach yourself to it until you press it again or depress it, and you visually become disconnected. This really applies to pillars in particular. Pillar combat is, I'm going to be honest, a disaster. Here's the reasons why. Number one, when you're supposed to be hugging a pillar, you're actually moving further away from it. If you have a look at this animation here, you go nice and erect and upright, but your character model actually moves away inside their hitbox circle from the surface. What you'll notice is you move around and you shoot around it in a nice fashion. I think they've done the animations rather well here. But one of the obstacles here is that you're so far away from the wall that you don't actually end up mitigating that much damage. You still take loads of damage, especially if they're not directly opposite you. The other issue is that you can only hug the 4 sides of the pillars. You cannot hug the corners. So if you've got someone coming across a room at sort of an oblique angle, the pillar combat system is no longer applicable, because you cannot use these graphical options or abilities to shoot around anymore. You just simply shoot the pillar to pieces, which is really rather frustrating. And because there's no snapping system, it doesn't show you very clearly that, hey buddy, you're not actually using this cover system properly here. This is why we need it much like Gears of War. If you're on a corner, it needs to snap you to one side or the other and say, hey, that's fine. If you want to move to the corner and stand there, you can use a pillar as cover, but you're not going to be able to shoot around it because you're not officially in cover. That's something I think the game needs to make much more obvious. It's such a simple change, maybe not technically to implement, but it would make a big difference. as to players knowing what the cover system is currently doing and not feeling so flimsy. So this actually concludes the largest issues I have with the cover system, and there aren't many. It really comes down to a lack of cover, a lack of scary enemies shooting at you, the cover being destroyed a little bit too quickly, not feeling overwhelmed and being able to reset enemies whenever you wish and as easily as you like to, which really makes the game difficulty sort of redundant because you can just walk away and regen your health at any time. And then we also have the fact that the pillar combat's a bit of a nightmare, and the fact that no one's ever sure if you're even in combat or not. So guys, let me know what you think down in the comments below. I really want to know what you think about the cover system. Do you want cover-based combat? Because the devs have said that's their intention. They don't want this to be like a traditional ARPG. But what do you enjoy, and what do you think's going to work? Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, guys. Hopefully you found it useful. Remember to like and subscribe. Keep up to date with all of the fresh comments I'll be coming at you with. And I will see you guys next time. Peace out.